Welcome to the war, and welcome to my first game of Valour and Fortitude, the Napoleonic set of rules created by Jervis Johnson and the Perry twins of Perry Miniatures to fight fairly large battles, I feel like, for the Napoleonic Wars. Now, full disclosure, I wasn't going to record this video only because I haven't played this set of rules at all, and I figured this would be a learning game, but for me, I didn't really want to mess up anything or delay too much with reading the rules and then recording, etc., etc. But as soon as I got it set up, I was like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. And I thought I'd hit the camera and we'll see what comes out. So with that being said, full couple of disclosures. This is very much sort of a test game, and I'm using this set of rules that came with War Games Illustrated, just a little leaflet. But the reason I'm calling that is there's a more recent version, or errata, that you can download online from the Perry Miniatures website. All of the rules, army lists, and scenarios are available there. But I just like this rather than printing anything out or flipping between my phone or other. So I don't think there's any egregiously different rules, but if there are, I'll update those as we go. Second caveat, this game is not card activated, but does require cards. And the only card, or a deck of playing cards, the only ones I could find to hand were my Luke Skywalker Star Wars ones, but I think that's fine. And then lastly, again, knowing full well that I'm still kind of a novice as it comes to Napoleonic wargaming, but we are certainly going to have to use our imagination here with the forces that I've built. In particular, the allies, or the coalition as I'm going to call them, because it's made up of 3 brigades of one of British, one of Portuguese, and one of Austrian. Now, obviously, they never all fought together at any one battlefield, but I'm really glad of how my Austrians came out. I really wanted to put them on the table, so they're going to be taking part in this battle. And this is where I just quickly talk about the scenario, then we'll get into the army. So, stand up, kind of square off match battle. You can see there are objective tokens across the battlefield, and those will be objectives that need to be held. You can see there's 2 over there in the foreground. They'll be held. This game runs on a time limit basis, meaning you set a period of time, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and you play to that agreed time, and then you call a decider or victor. But seeing as I tend to play kind of, well, obviously solo and pickup games, I'm going to run this for 5 equal turns, and then I will roll for a 6th turn. So we'll see how that shapes out. All right, lastly, let's get to what forces we've got. I'm going to make a quick cut, and then we'll get over to the forces. So each force is made up of 3 brigades. They're not huge brigades, but the minimum you can have in a brigade is 2. I don't actually think I have a brigade of, well, I do have 1 brigade of 2. We'll get to that. So, but to start with, we've got my current pride and joy, which is my Austrian Napoleonic forces here. So I believe the last video I made, you saw my cuirassiers, this unit of line over here. And then since my last video, I've added a unit of grenadiers and a commander. Very happy with how he came out. I actually painted 2 more commanders. These are from Piano Miniatures or Piano War Games, and they're absolutely exquisite and should be winning all kinds of awards for the amazing work that they do. So I'm very happy with their range and excited for how they came out. Anyway, that's an aside. That was a little bit of a show off of that unit. Then over here, we've got our commander. He's the overall commander-in-chief. And then we've got our Portuguese force here, 2 units of Portuguese line and a cannon with their associated brigade commander. And then over here, some British line made up of 1, 2, 3 units of line and some foot artillery, or field artillery, I should say, and their commander. Now you'll notice I've got what these are intended to be in columns or attack columns, because I painted these a while ago for a different system. I need to add more, at least 1 more base to each of these units to make them 6 bases rather than 3, but this is going to be an aesthetic thing. They count basically as covering that overall rectangle. So this part counts as covered and this part counts as covered, but just purely aesthetic reasons I set them up like that. But they are all considered to be in column. All right, let's go take a look at the French. Going from their left side of the battlefield to the right, you can see this unit is made up of 3 units of French line with a supporting cannon and their commander at the back there. So they're well equipped. And again, a couple of these units, I did get ambitious and paint 6 bases of them. So that's a couple I know I don't have to continue filling out, but that's the 1st Brigade. Commander-in-Chief here, the big guy himself. Yep, so he's gonna be there. And then this, okay, again, don't kill me here. Button counters, but I've got, this one is knowingly egregious. I've got 2 units of light infantry, a cannon, and then a unit of old guard here. I know they never really fought with other units like that, but I put them together just because I only got 1 unit. And I want to put them on the table. And then, oh yeah, their commander's here. And that just leaves the last brigade, which is this brigade of 2 units of cavalry here, a unit of hussars, and a unit, I'm blanking on these, they're not cuirassiers, and they're not dragoons. The name, I'm blanking on the name. Okay, quick cut here. They're chasseurs. There we go. Got there in the end. All right, so that's the forces. I'm gonna start taking turns here. In terms of the turn order, this is an I go, you go system. And the attacker, in this instance, the British, or the coalition, as I'm going to refer to them, they are the attacker. So they are going to be taking the 1st turn. Let's see how this all shakes out. Thanks for watching. End of the coalition turn 1. And I think I'm going to play this or record this in a turn-by-turn basis, meaning I'll record all of the one side's turns and then I'll record the other side's turns so we don't lose track of what's going on. So a fairly uneventful 1st turn, as you'd expect, opening moves. So this game, just to highlight, is split in, each turn is split into phases. First phase being a fate phase, where you draw a card that lets you do special abilities. For those that are familiar, I'll be using just the British fate chart, but for those that are not, each nation or each army sheet or roster list has a series of special moves that, that give them a little bit of flavor. And they're all the same, except I believe, except for the face cards, which are very kind of nation specific. But that being said, I just drew a 4 of hearts, or a 4, which is the same for any nation, and I'm just going to hold on to that for later. I'll explain what it does when I get through to use it. So that being said, after the fate phase, you then have the shooting phase, which in this case was represented just by this lone battery here, shooting at what has to be shot at the closest unit, which was this unit of line here. And they did inflict 1 loss. I don't know if you can see that tiny little dice back there. I'll be using those to track losses as we go. Could have been worse, but yeah, pretty ineffective opening fire there. Without that being said, we then move on to the orders phase, and every unit that is able to pass an order test, i.e. rolling higher than a 1, is allowed to make 2 actions or be given 2 orders. Things like your move, your reform, assault, things like that. I elected just to move these 3 units of line up 2 moves. Now, I'm keeping all ranges the same, but just given the nature of the size of the board that I'm playing on here, I'm having movement. So that means these units can each move on foot in column. They can move 6 inches per turn. So they've moved twice, 12 inches to move them up to there. Now, as I said, you got to roll better than a 1 to do this. And the Portuguese, unfortunately, rolled a 1, so they were not able to do anything. A la black powder kind of roll there. And then over on the coalition left flank, The cuirassiers moved up, and the 2 units of infantry moved up, and you can see they're now in possession of an objective. You got to be within 6 inches of an objective, although again, we'll have that to 3 inches in terms of distance, I think. Yeah, I think that makes sense, just given the size of the board. Making these things up on the fly, but hoping they're useful as we go. So that's going to be it for the coalition. Excited to get my very first turn of Valor and Fortitude. Sorry, I totally blanked there as I'm looking at something else. Excited to get my first turn underway, and I've got to tell you, there really is nothing like the feeling of just moving your Napoleonic forces across the table. It's just, it just feels very grand, very official, and very fancy. So I'm excited to see how the French reply. On to the French turn 1. Turn 1 for the French. And on the left side of the battlefield, you can see this brigade moved forward with 1 turn after firing the cannon. And then the center unit of line infantry deployed into line. So the 2 remaining units within the brigade are still in their attack column there, with the commander following up behind them. Just of note, also I forgot to mention, pull the Queen card. This is a special ability for the French. It's a melee attack, or it is a card that's relevant in melee, so not really that relevant right now. Then over here in the center, you can see the other cannon also fired. The closest unit at the time was the unit of line, or Austrian line over here. It did inflict one hit on them. And then the rest of the brigade also, again, moving forward. But again, all of them were staying in attack column. And I kept the old guard just a little bit back so that they're not a target for anything as of yet. And then just over here on the right flank of the French side, the chasseurs moved up with the hussars taking the objective there. So they're really kind of goading the Austrian cuirassiers there forward, I think, but they'll most likely find themselves getting attacked, I think, by the hussars as well. So opening move, opening turn, first turn for both sides, mostly one of deployment, a little bit of opening fire or close with the artillery, but nothing too consequential. So let's move on to turn 2. Okay, on to turn 2, and starting with the coalition. So again, in the fate phase, they pulled, 3 of hearts. The 3 allows them to do some hijinks or shenanigans in the opposing player's turn, basically making them miss an order, I believe. Not gonna use it either way, not gonna use it now. It's definitely something to save for later. So let's just start with the cannon, or the fire phase. Again, the cannon here was able to fire and inflicted a loss on the closest unit there, being that unit of lights for the French, and the cannon on the top of the hill here, just on the left of the screen, fired at their closest unit, but didn't cause any losses there. So let's work across in terms of activations and things like that. So the 3 units of line failed their order test, but I did actually read up. You're still allowed to make 1 maneuver for a unit within that brigade if they do that, and so I just moved the left unit of line there and put them into line. Equally for the Portuguese in the center, they both moved up with 1 activation and then formed line for their second activation. Over here, the 2 units of Austrian line, or the unit of Austrian line on the right and the unit of grenadiers on the left, both moved up and deployed into line. But the most eventful part of the turn really came down to the cuirassiers here, who charged the now routed chasseurs. They inflicted 4 losses on the unit. They caused them to rout. Now, and I think this is an important thing, because I'm hoping following the sequencing right here. They failed their fortitude test, which caused them, they failed their valor test, which caused them to rout. Them routing caused the brigade to take a fortitude test, which they passed. I believe I got that in the right order. They basically, the one unit ran off, but the rest of them hold. But they now have setbacks on them, and I'm realizing I put that on the wrong unit there. That belongs over with this chap. So they're actually going to be having to roll some kind of pretty serious morale checks in the next turn. The dice didn't show up too good, but they basically have 2 setbacks on them. But that all being said, the chasseurs in the event took 2 losses themselves. I believe they can take up to a total of 3, maybe 4. I'd have to look up the stat, but either way, they're okay right now. But they're certainly going to be taking some punishment either from the hussars charging them, or I would imagine the old guard over here shooting at them in the next turn. So big first outing for them, but I think they might be in trouble in the next turn. But interesting seeing kind of the overall development here. I feel like the table, well, it was initially, I was feeling it was going to be split into just 3 brigades, kind of just bouncing off each other individually. I can now see really more of the Portuguese and the Austrians pressing over on this left side of the battlefield, leaving the line to really kind of go out here. I feel like that's going to be kind of a bespoke battle there. And this side is going to do the same. So currently, as it stands, could go either way. Let's see what happens in the French turn 2. Second turn for the French, and you can see here on the left side of the French battlefield, the 2 units on the left and right flanks are advancing in attack column, and the unit of line in the middle has spread out into line. So I think this is going to be a pretty pivotal standoff in the next turn. That I'm interested to see how this plays out in terms of how the rules interpret making this happen. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to play it for the British, but you know what? That's going to be a matter for later. And for what it's worth, the cannon over here fired and inflicted 1 loss on this unit here. I'm marking those with those tiny dice behind them. Over in the center, let's see here. The cannon fired on the Portuguese, but didn't do anything of note. And then on this side, the 2 lights advanced and then reformed into line. And they're going to be causing some trouble, I feel, in the next turn for this unit of Austrian line as well. Of note, they are out of shooting range of the Portuguese line there. So they while they may be trouble with them in future turns, it's not going to be pivotal in the next turn. And then the most important development of this turn, certainly at least for the French, I elected to not charge in with the hussars here to the cuirassiers, only because I could see they would end up just getting mauled by the grenadiers in retort, and that would have then triggered some morale test here. Some running cavalry would probably have ensued from that, so we didn't want to do that. But that being said, I pushed in the old guard. They first of all, they'd fired on them in the fire phase and inflicted a loss, and then charged in or assaulted, and in melee they caused another loss, I think it might have been 2 actually, but that's taken the cuirassiers rating morale basically of up to 5, which is past their morale value. That would then cause them to take a fortitude test, which they did, but they passed. So they're holding for now. We'll see how that develops, I think, in the third turn. But ultimately, again, we can see as we pan out how this is kind of taking shape. Haven't played any cards yet. Should have also mentioned the French got another card that wasn't of much value right now. So they'll do something. It's basically a card that lets them shuffle their spent cards back into the deck and use them again. So not too important right now because they haven't used any cards. But I'm really enjoying this. It's a very fast playing game. I'm playing these turns very fast, even with rule checks in between things and making sure I'm sequencing things in the right order. I'm certain I'm missing some little nuance, but for the most part, I really am enjoying how this is going. All right, on to turn 3. Let's see what the the allies can do in retort. Start of turn 3, and with the coalition going first, they certainly threw everything they had tactically at the French, but the French are doggedly holding on. So I'll start over on this side. Just in terms of combat, really everything on the Austrian side was thrown into combat. The cuirassiers continue to attack or stay in melee combat with the old guard. Both sides have really depleted themselves down to the point of having no morale value left in terms of or any fight left in them, but they're passing their checks to hold. So that's been certainly an interesting combat there. Although those losses have started to or the setbacks, I should say, are starting to weigh on the French. You can see that dice, but they've got 2 setbacks there. Elsewhere, or over just here, the Grenadiers and the Austrian line both threw themselves into combat with this unit of lights. You can see the lights are also at their limit from a morale point of view. I'm blanking on the word that we use for is it tenacity? But their tenacity value is also at the limit, but they passed their test, even with the support. Over here, the Portuguese still not really making their presence felt, but I could see probably in the next turn they're going to be kind of in a decisive role, although to be fair, they are also holding that objective. But most importantly of all, over on this side, the fate cards were very kind to the British line. Over here, they got the ace, which basically is an all-out assault that lets them roll extra dice or in combat. So let's start here. This unit of line threw themselves against the French line, took a hit or a loss. But look, the French line, they've also taken 4 losses, so they're at their limit. Also 2 setbacks for them. Then this combat, I'm amazed. Everything was thrown at this unit here. They also are completely crushed, but holding on, passing their morale checks, their fortitude checks. So most importantly, you can see here, this brigade's got 2 setbacks. The brigade in the center has 2 setbacks. And the cavalry brigade, which really is just the hussars at this point, also has 2 setbacks. Currently, the coalition only has 1 setback on the Austrians. So heavily, the tide of battle seems to be swaying in the coalition's favor, but the French are holding on. So let's see how they can reply. On to the French turn 3. French turn 3, and it's still just a melee slugfest. It's probably the best way to put it. Let's start over here on the French left flank. So you can see here this unit of French line in attack column is still duking it out with 2 units of British line against them. Let's just talk about this. And then here you can see 2 units of French line are closing in here on that unit of British line, with the flanking unit there being in attack column. An interesting question that I can't quite ponder is, through the various phases, you can take out, there's the fate phase, the shoot phase. Interesting that goes early. Then you've got orders and activations, such as move, reform, rally. It's rally I want to talk about. And then you have combat. Combat isn't itself an action or an activation. And where I couldn't quite understand in the rules is, obviously when units are locked in combat, there's nothing that says that they can't perform an action, because they can't shoot, or that's a separate phase. Melee is a separate phase, but the rally seems to be perfectly viable to perform during a turn. I tried to read otherwise. It doesn't quite make sense to me. You'd be able to do that, but there's nothing that says you can't. So anyway, I've been using I used activations this turn to help rally off some of these losses that all of the varying factions have taken. After the game, I'm going to do some more reading to see if that's entirely accurate. But anyway, that ought to be said. These sides are all still locked, and from an objective point of view, the British have more figures closer to that objective, and the French have more figures closer to that objective. However, the British did take a loss in the turn, or a setback, I should say, reflected there. So they've got their first setback. Also of note, let's see, over here in the center, the fake card that the French pulled gave them an extra shot, basically, in the fire phase, which this cannon used to shoot on that unit of line, and they've inflicted a loss too, the first loss for the Portuguese. And then over here, this unit of lights pushed into the Austrian line, but again, they're all still locked in and not causing anything to break here, other than over here, the Hussars did charge into the cuirassiers on the Austrian side, and they were able to rout them, which has now caused, importantly, 3 setback points on the Austrian brigade. So they are now considered wavering, which is really going to affect them moving forward. Let's see what happens now as we move into the coalition's 4th turn. The coalition doesn't have as many setbacks, but this brigade is wavering. So let's see what happens. Coalition turn 4. British turn 4, and you can see in the combat over here that the Austrian brigade was finally routed, broken, shattered. Shattered is, I think, the correct term in terms of the game, and they retreated from the battlefield. So they're out of the game. And that, unfortunately, has left the Portuguese, even though they lended support or melee support in this round, left them sorely outnumbered with this large amount of French bearing down on them across the Portuguese left side of the battlefield. Over here, the British were able to rout one of the French line units, and that's led to a 3rd setback to the brigade, and they're now considered wavering as well. The card that was pulled, the fake card that was pulled for the British, or the coalition, I should say, was related to the shooting phase, which at the time there was no shooting opportunities available at all for the coalition. So it's a card they're not going to be using this round. But this does seem to be probably this next turn might be the last turn of the game. We'll see how it goes. Also, one really key mistake that I realized I've made that is frustrating. I understand now why these units are just grinding away and lasting so long in combat. I've been rolling for every Valor test that needs to be, every Valor test that needs to be taken. I've been rolling a single dice to test their morale value. Just a slight note, you're actually supposed to roll 1 dice per failed test, which means rather than rolling 1 dice and hoping to get higher than a 3, there have been several instances I probably should have been rolling 4 or 5 dice, and any one of those not being a 3 would have been a loss. So major learning there that's going to impact certainly the rest of the game. However, I don't think it's a total loss or a wash in terms of the game, because I've been playing it fairly on either side. So I hope that hasn't interrupted the flow of the game or the enjoyment of watching the game. But I'll certainly be improving that from here on out. We'll be rolling 1 test per failed, one dice per valid test per loss. And I'm going to imagine we're going to see units crumble a lot faster moving forward. So let's see what happens. French turn 4. French turn 4, and what a difference. Those valid tests taking here. So just on this side of the battlefield, really thinking that discretion is the better part of valor. The hussars are avoiding combat, and they've just gone to take the objective over here. Similarly, the old guard are close, have broken away from the rest of their brigade, and are now just going to camp there whilst they hold that objective. So I think for these two units, the battle's over. Over here, the Portuguese line infantry that was in contact with the lights here just couldn't withstand being also hit in the flank by the other unit of line. Now, this has opened them up to being fired at in the next round, but I don't know if that's going to be enough. One unit firing if that's going to be enough. There might have to be some sort of a miracle to happen there. The cannon fired, didn't do anything. That's that. Over here, this was ugly. Both the French and the British both lost a unit of line. So you can see here, again, things are kind of as they were in terms of objective holding. The British holding this objective, the French holding this objective. You can now see both commanders have suffered 3 setbacks each, which is causing both brigades to be wavering. However, what might be impactful is the French have got a lot less losses on both of their units. Each of them have got 2, whereas the British have one of the unit on the right has only 2, but the unit on the left has 6. So they're in pretty bad shape. So let's move on to what will likely be the final turn. Over to coalition turn 5. Coalition turn 5, and I don't think I've ever seen such a turnaround in fortunes in a single turn of a game. I'm just going to hold the camera here while I explain what happened. At the end of the last turn, the French, in terms of victory points, or however you want to describe those, were winning this game 5-2. They had 4 objectives and had routed 1 brigade, giving them a total of 5 victory points. The coalition had 2. At the end of this turn, that's completely turned around, and now the British hold 1, 2, 3. They have 4 victory points to the French's 2. Let me show you what's happened here. Over here, unfortunately, this British brigade failed to activate. So really there was very little happening here. But the Portuguese, the unit here was able to shoot into one of the lights, or the lights that were here, routed them. Then the commander failed to pass the required valor test, which then caused the other unit to rout, and the old guard to be out of command, who were far off on the other side of the table, also failed their test and also routed. So really, this side of the table is just completely left wide open with just the hussars here holding this objective. So they've got that objective, and the French also hold that objective there. But the one in the far side over there, up here, is uncontested, and the coalition hold that one, the one here, and having routed 1 unit, they've also, or 1 brigade, I should say, they've also got that going for them. So I think unless the French can smash the British line here, then this will be a coalition victory. Let's move on to what is very likely the final turn of the game, on to French turn 5. French turn 5, and as predicted, it was the final turn of the game. So over here on the French left, they were able to completely eliminate the British line that was here. First of all, the cannon fired into one of the units of line that was in attack column here was able to rout them off the table, having failed their valor tests. And then this unit in attack column was able to crash into the flank of the other line unit, also removing them from the battle as well. So with that being said, the French are in control of one objective here and one objective over there by the Hussars. 2 objectives and 2 routed brigades, giving them a total of 4 victory points. The coalition are in control of one objective there, one objective there by the cannon, and then they removed or caused 1 brigade to be shattered, giving them a total victory of, or victory point total of 3. So end result, 4-3 to the French. And what an amazing game. Now, a lot of reflection points. First of all, I love this game. This game, to me, feels, in a complexity point of view, similar to Lion Rampant, but more appropriate or apropos to the Napoleonic period. And I love that. It's got, to me, just the right level of complexity. Now, that being said, first game, I know I made some mistakes along the way. Feel free to call those out as you see fit. I also feel like I certainly learned what I was doing as I was advancing in the game. And I do think having that shooting phase be basically the first phase after you pull a fate card is a real mind bender in terms of a conundrum in what order you should be doing things. I was often thinking ahead of moves where I'm like, okay, I'll pull a unit back and then that will allow a unit to shoot. No, you got to shoot first. So that's a really interesting thing. Also, I'd say the scale and complexity of the game, I can certainly see this being fantastic for larger battles, like really, tables full of miniatures kind of things. I think it would be fantastic for that. I do find, I like black powder, but I find I get bogged down sometimes in the, first of all, in the nuance, and also just in the math that you got to do, adding things up. This seemed to just flow a lot more cohesively and enjoyably. I think is really a really meaningful thing. I'm motivated to paint more. I've actually got another French unit on the painting table right now, but I really enjoyed this, and I can see this being a rule set that I'm going to play for some time. Certainly recommend it. You can download the rules from the Perry Miniatures website, and I encourage anyone that's got an interest to give it a go. And for those that might be intimidated by the amount of miniatures you need, I think you could do it with less. I think these forces really kind of slugged it out, and I think a lot of that had to do with me not getting my morale rules right from the start. But once I figured that out, yeah, things moved even faster than they already were, and I can really recommend this. So anyway, that's enough rambling. Hope it was some inspiration. It's inspired me for sure to keep painting some more. So thanks for watching.